All right, let's dive into one of history's biggest, most fascinating contradictions, Alfred Nobel. You hear that name, you immediately think of peace, right? The Nobel Peace Prize. But the story of the man and the fortune behind that prize, well, that's built on something way, way more destructive. We're going to explore how one person can end up being both a saint and, well, a sinner. Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine reading that sentence and realizing it's about you. This absolutely brutal line was written about the guy who created the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a jaw-dropper, for sure. And honestly, it's the key to understanding his entire complicated life. So, how on earth does that happen? How do you become this celebrated hero to humanity and get slapped with a label like the Merchant of Death? That's the paradox, right? That's the puzzle we're putting together today. To get the man, you have to start with his invention. And Nobel wasn't just tinkering in a lab for fun. No, he was trying to solve a huge, incredibly dangerous problem. You could say he was trying to tame a demon. And that demon had a name. Nitroglycerin. It was this liquid explosive that was just pure raw power, but it was ridiculously unstable. I mean, a slight bump, a little change in temperature, and boom, catastrophe. It was almost impossible to control. So here's where Nobel's genius kicks in. His solution, which he patented back in 1867, was so simple it was brilliant. He figured out if you take that crazy unstable nitroglycerin and soak it up into a kind of porous dirt called kieselguhr, you get dynamite. Just like that, he tamed the demon. He made it stable, portable, and totally controllable. And you have to understand, its intended purpose wasn't war at all. It was progress. Dynamite completely changed the game for construction. Suddenly, you could blast tunnels through solid mountains, carve out huge canals like the Panama Canal, and make modern mining a reality. It literally helped build the modern world. So Nobel gets incredibly rich from all this. But then, a really bizarre twist of fate forces him to look at what he's really created. An obituary gets published, and it changes absolutely everything for him. So, the year is 1888. This is 8 years before Alfred Nobel actually dies. His brother Ludwig passes away. But a French newspaper, well, they get it wrong. They mix up the brothers and report that it was Alfred, the famous inventor, who had died. And this is what he reads. Alfred Nobel got a chance to read his own obituary, and it was a complete horror show. The Merchant of Death is dead. It boiled his entire life's work down to its power to kill. Can you even imagine the shock of reading that about yourself? It hit him like a ton of bricks. This was absolutely not the legacy he wanted. See, Nobel actually thought his inventions would make war so horrifying that nobody would ever fight again. So to see his legacy defined as pure death, it was the ultimate gut punch. He saw, right there in black and white, how the world would remember him. And in that moment, he decided he had to change the story. And that shocking moment lit a fire under him. It became the spark for one of the most incredible acts of philanthropy the world has ever seen. He was going to completely rewrite his legacy, no matter the cost. And he wasn't messing around. He dedicated pretty much his entire fortune, which today would be worth over $160 million, to this new cause. That's a staggering amount of money now, let alone back then. It was everything he had. So in his last will, he laid out a very specific plan. He ordered that his entire massive estate be used to fund a series of annual prizes. It was a direct answer to that obituary, a way to atone for the legacy he was so afraid of leaving behind. And of course, these are the prizes we all know today, awards for the greatest achievements that benefit humanity in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and here's the most important one, in peace. It was his grand attempt to rewrite his story forever. But that brings up a really tough question. That obituary called him the Merchant of Death. I mean, was it fair? To even begin to answer that, we have to try and calculate the real human cost of his invention. Okay, a really important disclaimer before we get into these numbers. These are speculative estimates. You gotta remember, explosives are tools. They make violence bigger, faster, and deadlier, but they don't create the desire to be violent in the first place. This is all about expediting death, not creating it out of thin air. So, let's start with terrorism and sabotage. The estimated number of deaths where dynamite played a part is somewhere between 20,000 and 100,000 people. Now look at this. In the very industries dynamite was supposed to help, like mining and construction, accidents are estimated to have killed between 200,000 and a full million people. The tool turned on its users. But here's the number that just takes your breath away. In warfare, where dynamite and its descendants were packed into shells, bombs, and mines, the estimated number of deaths it helped expedite is somewhere between 50 and 120 million. It's just an almost unthinkable scale. And here it is, all laid out. When you add it all up, the total number of deaths expedited by Nobel's inventions is somewhere in the ballpark of 70 to 170 million people. It's a number so huge your brain can't even really process it. Which brings us right back to where we started, to the paradox of progress, and to the story of a man who unleashed something into the world that he could never, ever truly control. This really is the whole story in one slide, isn't it? On one side, his invention was this incredible tool for construction that literally shaped the planet we live on. But on the other, it was a horrifyingly efficient tool for destruction that made death possible on an industrial scale. You know, Nobel's story is more than just a history lesson. It's a warning that is just as relevant today, maybe even more so. Innovation is an amazing thing, but it can have these huge, unforeseen consequences that you just can't predict. Consequences that echo for generations. And that leaves us with this one final, heavy question. When you look at the life of Alfred Nobel, the builder and the destroyer, the saint and the sinner, you just have to ask yourself, once an invention is out there in the world, can its creator ever really control what happens next?